Chapter 34. Undisclosed Ursus Arrival. Ande. Mistress is angry. It's not the typical anger of an owner. It's not something wrong or out of place. It's not like a flash in a pan, fiery and dangerous for a moment, but gone just as fast. No, this is something low-burning, eating away at the kindling at a slow, sustainable pace. It's the righteous anger of betrayal. I knock at the door out of custom and general fear that the door will be splintered inwards from a burst of wild magic should she be allowed to touch the door herself. We don't have to wait long, and much like this morning, it's Sarkara who opens the door, not an attending servant. "Shauna?" He smiles brightly at her as though he can't see the shadow over her eyes and her half-made hair done in haste as we rushed over. "What are you doing here? You only have a half day today. I would have thought you'd be out on the town." He smiles, and I can see now that he's not blind or stupid. He knows my mistress's rage. He knows how fucked he is. His levity is all angled at trying to distract her. He hopes to smother the embers with sand rather than risk making a mistake that sends the flames higher. "Well!" My mistress moves in on her own, letting herself in. I want to follow, but I'm caught at the entryway. I should be following behind my mistress at all times, but it's rather rude to cut in front of the master of the house, let alone to wander in without permission. Technically, Sarkara should be leading us into the house, but neither of us seems to be stupid enough to try and bring that up at this moment. He's at least very understanding, gesturing me in, not looking the slightest bit angered by the turn of events. Inside, I can hear my mistress continuing on. "I know that my good friend did not just ask me that, did not just question my wanderings, especially my good friend who's not at all keeping secrets from me." Mistress is irritated and making quite a show of it. She waves her arms around, punctuating each exasperated statement with a flourish. "Shauna!" The warning tone in Sarkara's voice has me bristling. He hasn't made a move yet, and his tone is more mildly inconvenienced than angry. But I can't really be sure. I won't be much help in a fight between mages, but I will defend my mistress if that's what it comes to. "My good friend who would tell me if he was getting warp totems sold to him off the black market," she accuses, and I try to keep my eyes on both mages at the same time. A challenge has been made. One of them is in the wrong, but it's not clear who yet. Above all, I have to be ready if either one of them decides that this situation needs to escalate further. Mistress is breathing hard, still frustrated, but no longer the barely concealed ball of rage she had been at the start. Sarkara doesn't seem offended, doesn't bristle at the accusation, doesn't fidget or try to lie. He huffs out an exasperated sigh, and most of the tension drains from his body. "I'm not doing anything illegal. Stars, Shauna, I'm barely doing anything shady," he denies, tone free of most of the telltale signs of dishonesty. If anything, he seems relieved. Blue moves carefully from around the corner in the hallway, poking his head out at all the commotion. He smiles faintly in my direction, beneath the view of our masters. Just as quickly as the recognition comes, it passes, and Blue moves slowly around the fight to stand behind his own master. I'm relieved at the acknowledgement. However rocky the grounds were in our first interactions, Blue would make a good friend. I'm not very good at making them, at being in situations where I'm supposed to interact with others at a casual level. He's more forgiving than most, and given that we're probably going to be seeing a lot of each other, I'm glad. He's been through more than me, and despite his unwillingness to share, he listens to everything, even when I ramble about things I know too much about. "My good friend who would tell me if he was dabbling in advanced magic." Mistress immediately changes course, not at all perturbed by the fact she's been caught in an inaccuracy. "I certainly wouldn't have to hear it as a rumor from that big-mouthed Taylor." "Shauna," Sarkara tries to start, but Mistress cuts him off. "No, I don't want to have to hear things about you from the mill, Kara. You mean more to me than that." She moves over and sits on the couch, seemingly drained of all the energy that had been driving her up until now. Sir Kara's silent for a moment, taking in my mistress's suddenly distant demeanor with unease, bouncing back and forth on the balls of his feet before taking action. "I'm sorry, Shauna." He takes a few steps closer, remorseful, but my mistress does not respond. Blue and I are left behind as Sir Kara goes to the couch and with a little hesitation continues. "I don't know how I will live with myself." The words are apologetic, but the tone is lacking as he walks closer and clutches his chest, wiping a tear from his eye that I'm certain was never there. Oh, stars, how can I live with the shame? Shauna, I see the light! Sir Kara falls onto the same couch, right on top of my mistress. "Oh, you big oaf, you're crushing me!" The response is immediate, and my mistress is back to her lively, animated self. It doesn't deter Sir Kara. "The shame!" he wails, continuing to push into my mistress as though he were still falling. I look over at Blue in confusion, but he simply shrugs at our master's antics. Confused, but not concerned. "You're forgiven, you dweeb! Just get off me!" Mistress Albert screeches, trying to get out from under Sir Kara's body. "Ah, thank goodness!" He smiles brightly and allows my mistress to extract herself from the couch. "However will I repay your kindness?" "I require cookies. And perhaps a few of those totems." She says the last bit quieter, almost to herself. "What?" Sir Kara's confusion is obvious in both his tone and face. I have to say I'm a little surprised myself. I didn't know we were coming over for magic. The closest contact I had with magic was my previous mistress's husband, but he'd been a military mage. None of the flair or more temperamental magics of academic magic. I've only ever had magic channeled through me, and I've certainly never been teleported. I wonder what it feels like. I wonder if I can ask Blue. "Well, I take it you didn't know, but those are some advanced magics. We aren't supposed to touch them for another 2 years. But you can't match the convenience." Mistress trails off a little, leaving the discussion open. "Shauna..." Sir Kara's tone insinuates that this is a bad idea, and though I really don't know the specifics of what they're talking about, I'm inclined to agree. "No seller would provide for students as young as us. At least not a quality product. Please, come on, for me." Mistress bats her eyelashes in an exceptionally exaggerated plea that I'm fairly certain would break most people. Sir Kara seems unimpressed by it, though. "So, you came over the second you heard someone saw something weird." There's a huff to Sir Kara's voice, but it's more resigned than angry. Now that things have settled down a bit, it's easy to move forward and place myself at my mistress's feet. If nothing else, I can serve as a distraction. This mistress, unlike the one who had me previously, actually enjoys my presence. She doles out affection in a much less rigid system, at least. Certainly after that talk Sir Kara and she shared. She hardly ever reads from the rule-book anymore. Either way, it's certainly no trouble to kneel at her feet. In fact, I often find myself seeking out my mistress, even when it hasn't been requested of me. There's a certain safety there. Even knowing that everything I am is in mistress's hands, it doesn't distress me like it had at times with my old mistress. Her hand cards through my hair, and I find myself gently pressed to lean against mistress's leg. Looking up, I can see that Blue has taken a similar position at his master's side, though Sir Kara does seem a little more focused on his guest than his familiar. The petting is a pleasant sensation, but I do hope mistress can stay away from my ears while there's other company. She likes how riled up she can make me in public, but I often just find the whole thing unbearably embarrassing. Luckily, it seems mistress has other plans and continues talking with her friend. "Well, that and we hadn't talked about what extracurriculars we were going to do." Mistress pulls out a bundle of flyers and papers of all different eye-catching colors with big swirly fonts, dumping the stack rather unceremoniously in between the two of them. "Shauna, I don't know how I feel about this," Sir Kara begins, but mistress will have none of his excuses. "I will not allow you to waste away in some library, ignoring the life around you." I like the library, Sir Kara says in a rather petulant tone, but takes a flyer off the top, grimacing at what must be printed there.
You dropped one, Master,
Blue pipes up, and he's being rather generous. They've dropped a few, due to Mistress's theatrics. Mistress simply smiles and takes the stack Blue's made from the fallen papers and starts with the very first one.
Ooh, military opportunities. What do you say, Kara, to been there, done that?
Mistress wiggles the single sheet of paper enticingly.
Been there?
Blue inquires, ears quirking to a funny angle in his confusion.
Your master's already served his time with our lovely military forces. That's why he's so much older than all of us this year,
Mistress answers, finishing with a sly little grin that says she was happy to be the one who told Blue. Sir Kara looks a little tense.
You're older?
The question slips out before Blue probably thought it all the way through. He definitely regrets asking the question once it registers that he said it out loud. His shoulders go up to his ears and plants his eyes firmly on the ground, as if not being able to see his master means that his master won't be able to see him. I cringe with him, remembering the bruises I'd seen at the care center. Mistress said that it was from the market, but surely not all of it could have come from the market's handling. Even I have a few new bruises from my mistress. It's impossible for there to be no growing pains while we adjust to new masters, but I'm not sure what kind of master Sir Kara is.
I'm 24, Blue, Mistress explains. That's about the average age for the first years. Your master's 27.
And then, with a quirked grin,
he's an old man.
Oh, shut up, Sir Kara jabs as he swipes the paper, crinkling the whole sheet into a nice little ball. He doesn't seem angry, doesn't even address Blue for his inappropriate comment. I wonder if he'll be in trouble after we leave, or if his master simply doesn't care.
Either way,
Mistress shrugs.
Military opportunities out, assuming you're done with service, Kara?
She leaves it as a question, but it doesn't seem like she thinks he wants to return to military service. Absolutely, he cries, throwing the paper wad over his shoulder. It's hard to reconcile the image I have of Sir Kara with what I know of military mages. There's not much in the way of similarities, but then again, mages would react to military life in a wide spectrum of ways. Still, he doesn't seem as strict or rule-oriented as I'm used to.
There's a care and keeping of magical creatures, magic-sensitive flora and fauna. Oh, flying lessons! Kara, please!
I don't have to join you in your death wish, Sir Kara says in monotone. He turns to pet Blue in protest of Mistress's suggestion.
Just the first few lessons, come on!
Mistress pleads. Blue, do you want to grab some tea for us? I have a feeling we're going to be in it for a while. Sir Kara addresses Blue, seemingly entirely content to ignore Mistress unless she stops talking about flying. Blue nods, looking over to me but twiddling his thumbs like he wants to ask something. As it turns out, Blue doesn't even need to ask. Shauna, would it be okay if Ande went and helped him? I'm sure between the two of them they could find some of the extra cookies I have laying around. Sir Kara speaks casually, but at Mistress's dismissive gesture he smiles at the two of us before shooing us off as Mistress tries to remake her case. I feel pretty useless following Blue into the kitchen. I don't know where anything is or what I'm allowed to touch, so I just resign myself to standing to one side and watching as Blue pulls out dishes, a teapot, and a kettle, and heating the water. Eventually there's nothing left to do but wait for the water to boil, and Blue just looks up at me with a smile. I don't know what to say. I'm not terribly good at conversation, but I do know that I should be filling the silence. Thankfully, Blue eventually takes mercy on me and starts.
So your mistress wants to learn to fly, does she?
He asked in a subdued tone. He's very tentative, as though he's not sure if what he's saying will go over well. I think it's a fair question. Flying's an interesting skill, but not really popular. I suppose it will be difficult getting me on the back of a broom, though perhaps we could use a carpet. Either way, it's going to... What's it like teleporting? I try not to wince as Blue looks away, shrinking in on himself. I know I'm blunt and it can sometimes offend people, but it's not something I've ever really had a chance to work on.
It's a lot more intense than you'd think. There's this popping sound, and it gives me a stomach ache and hurts my head a little. I'm pretty sure that's normal. Apparently, you get ripped apart and put back together, so there's that.
Blue elaborates. That's, I don't have words.
Yeah,
Blue continues, seeing my distress, or perhaps he's just realized that I'm not going to say anything of substance anytime soon.
I threw up the first time we did it,
he admits quietly, and that does get a reaction out of me. I can't imagine what a disaster that must have been, and I don't even try to quiet my gasp. And yet, he and his master get along so nicely now. I can't believe that the incident would be forgotten so quickly, but Sarkara sits and pets Blue, holding him close without a single shred of resentment to be seen. Are you all right? I ask, a little incredulous at the circumstances.
Master says it's safe. He's been doing it since he was a kid,
Blue explains, and I'm struck a little dumb at the fact that Sarkara's been doing advanced magic for so many years. I wonder what kind of family he had that would have pushed him into such complex and dangerous studies. Mistress was very impressed when she heard what her friend could do, but that's not what I meant.
Well, you have to ask me more directly,
Blue snips, making me think he's more aware of the question I want answered than he's letting me believe. I know, just bear with me. Oh. I almost smack myself for the awful phrasing and start again before Blue's stifled giggle can grow into full laughter. Is Sarkara nice? I know I shouldn't ask, but what did he...
Yes,
Blue answers without hesitation. I don't know what to say to that. He's been plenty kind to me, so there's no real way I can disagree, but I am still concerned. I was there when Blue got punished in front of the rest of the class. I saw, just as well as anyone, that Sarkara was practiced in discipline. Blue must see the disagreement brewing in my head because he continues before I can say anything.
He's the kindest and most forgiving master I've ever had, Ande. I swear, sometimes I think I'm going mad at the things he does for me.
He's saying it to himself as much as to me, eyes gleaming and voice tight. For a long moment, I don't say anything. Blue's body is tight with tension, and I'm worried anything will set him off.
He's teaching me how to read,
he says eventually, quietly, as though to himself more than to me. I was taught the basics in training, enough so that I wouldn't burden my master with unnecessary questions, but not much beyond that. I'd forgotten that Blue had been a pet before all this, that it was still how others saw him. Training new skills is something usually left to the market's discretion, or individual owners will enroll their pets into the programs they want. I've never heard of a master taking the time to teach their pet themselves. Most would have neither the time nor the desire. I understand. We fall back into silence as the kettle sings. By the time we get back, they've moved on from talking through extracurricular opportunities and gone on to something else entirely. Something about classes and books, I'm sure. The tea goes over well, though it does break the rhythm of the conversation, and soon the clink of the teacups rings obscenely loud in my ears. Mistress would continue speaking if she had any interest at all in continuing the topic.
So, Kara, there is one more teensy little thing I needed to tell you about.
Mistress hedges with more hesitance than I've ever heard her use. All right, who wants to kill me? His tone is jovial, but he still sets down his teacup, giving Mistress his full attention.
Genevieve.
Mistress rushes out as she shoves her face back into the cup. Stars, Shauna, I wasn't being serious. Sarkara puts his head into his hands, and Blue just pats his knee, trying to provide as much comfort as possible in this scenario. I take a few seconds, but eventually Sarkara heaves a sigh and looks back to my mistress. What the hell did I do to get onto her shit list?
Apparently, you did well. Not your fault. She just doesn't like the attention being on someone else.
Mistress tries to say it in a soothing tone, but there's no denying the implicit dangers. Yeah, all right, that makes sense. Sarkara chuckles to himself, lost for a moment in the absurdity of the whole thing. I suppose I can understand. He hasn't done anything to slight this Genevieve, and yet she's made him an enemy.
So, that means you're coming to the ball she's hosting and invited you to at the end of the month.
Mistress grimaces at the full-body flinch that racks Sarkara. I had heard about the ball, but I'm still not quite sure what to make of it. I've certainly never been taken out to an event as fancy as this is supposed to be. Mistress and I went out to get clothes and stuff for the event, so at the very least I know I'll be accompanying my mistress.
Stars burn it all, Shauna! That's in 2 weeks! Sarkara exclaims. Yep, and very formal, so you probably need to spiff up.
Mistress tries to summon a winning smile. Sadly, her magics are not that advanced.
She's planning to humiliate me,
Sarkara grumbles into his hands, curling in on himself on the couch. Blue just looks on, patting his master's leg in what I'm sure is supposed to be a reassuring gesture.
I gotta say, I am impressed. You really pissed her off. She's throwing a party for the whole grade just to make sure you show up,
Mistress says, popping a cookie into her mouth. Because if I don't, he groans, slowly putting the pieces together with great pain.
It would be social death,
Mistress finishes for him.
Great! Any good news?
He asks, sounding near hysterics.
She was planning this since yesterday's show in potions. Apparently you got her yelled at by a teacher, so kudos. As long as you didn't do anything to show her up today, she might have some time to cool down,
Mistress informs him brightly. Oh, stars. Sarkara just deflates again, slumping against the couch.
Well, in other news, I found a great spa. It's modeled after those foreign bathhouses. It's super cool, and they're giving discounts to students.
Mistress tries to generate some interest from her sullen colleague. Really? A spa? He peeks out from under his hands, seemingly confused as to why the news of the new bathhouse might dig him out of his grave.
Well, they have a grooming service for familiars, too. That's kind of why I noticed them. They dolled Ande up real nice, at least.
She leans in and ruffles my freshly washed hair. I'm just glad she didn't like the ribbons. Really? Sarkara addresses the question more to me than my mistress, but I shuffle forward at her direction and show off their work. They cleaned just about every inch of me and dusted me with a soft powder that made me smell good. Aside from the bows in my hair, they also conditioned the dry and damaged hair, chiding me for not taking care of it properly and cutting off the split ends. Sarkara seems impressed, at least, taking in the change in my appearance with a quirked smile. It makes me glad I saved my favorite bit for last. I show off my nails, cut, cleaned, and coated in a shiny lacquer. They did the same to my feet, but I doubt Mistress would approve of me shoving my feet in her friend's face. Regardless, Sarkara seems impressed and more than pleased. Right. I'll think about it, Shauna. Mistress smiles when she sees him turn to Blue and run an affectionate hand through his hair. Somehow, I don't doubt we will see them there.